Welcome to Forensic Friday,
where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all. My buddy Curtis is coming over today to give me an IV again, so I'll have to find out how much of our podcast he's listened to since the last time. And I gave Red a hat today, too, when I got my hair fixed again.
You brought her a hat?
I did. I brought her a hat.
I need a pink one.
I have one for you. We got a shipment. Look at our Instagram, people. We got a link to the hat. I did highlight. So Nat and I spent an hour and a half and figured out how to share the Instagram account finally. So if you see any subpar content, you know that it was me. Like that you don't even have to ask yourself what happened there. It was me.
Also, your hand is raised on our Zoom link right now.
Of course it is. Hi. That's what happens when I talk with my hand. When I was teaching last week, my hand was up pretty much the whole time.
Oh, that's funny.
On the Zoom. Okay. We have quite the mini.
We do. Well, and this mini is a really great, I was going to say setup. Y'all, I am tired. Gray kept me up all night. I can't even remember what I was going to say. But it's a great intro to what we have on Friday. Our Friday episode is with someone that we connected through Instagram. We're stoked.
We are stoked. We interviewed Grace Elizabeth Stewart. Why am I so precise with her name? Because our little baby bestie is also Grace Elizabeth.
I know. It's crazy.
It's kind of a crazy story because was I on TikTok or Instagram? I don't actually know. I think I was on Instagram.
You sent it to me on Instagram.
Then I definitely didn't see it on TikTok because I would not know how to platform hop like that. There's no way. So I saw this quick reel that she did, and it was absolutely brilliant. She left an abusive relationship. She's going to share her story. But I sent it to Natalie just on the off chance that this woman might be willing to talk to us because how she talked about what she went through is really special and different than what I've heard. And I've heard a million survivor stories and they're all amazing. Mm-hmm. And every person who gets out of a situation like this is incredible.
Yeah.
But this one, the way she talked about it was just clear and relatable. And I think it's going to help a lot of people. So anyway, we got her book. We reached out to her. Nat reached out to her because technology. And what happened from there? She's like, sure.
Yeah, no, I reached out and she essentially, she responded within an hour and was super stoked to join our podcast. So
generous with her time because we don't make any money doing this.
No.
At all at this point. The hope is someday maybe, but we do this because we're so passionate about prevention and she's doing what she's doing for the same reason. And so it was a great meeting of the minds, I feel like.
Well, and I think what caught my attention with her was it felt like she took ownership of her story instead of like continuing to feel victimized by her story. I think that's, and I don't want to speak for you, Janine, but I think that's what caught both of our eye is that she didn't have fear. She kept him anonymous, which is great, like very respectful.
Oh yeah.
But she took ownership of her story and really, she was like, I'm willing to talk about it. So that's what really caught my eye. She's unapologetically sharing, which is great.
Unashamed, which she should not be ashamed. And we try so hard to teach people that they don't need to hide. They don't need to hide their story, hide any part of themselves that way. And she embodies that in such a cool way. So we can't wait for you guys to meet her on Friday when that episode drops. We are going to talk today about trauma bonds because we want to give you guys kind of a primer for her story. So you're listening for some of those things in her story. And we're going to have a part 2, part 3, part whatever with her because she's so incredible and we managed to get through her story, but there's still a million things to talk about. But this is a great way to start.
Yep. Perfect.
So basically, today we're going to talk about why people stay in relationships that hurt them and might even defend the person that's causing them that pain. And a lot of times, a trauma bond is mistaken for love, loyalty, commitment. It looks like this passionate, will never quit kind of love, but it's really a lot twistier than that. And we've seen a lot of examples of this in cases that we've done over the years. And so I'm not going to give a bunch of examples, but if you listen to just our history, we have celebrity examples of this, lots of true crime stories, tragic losses. But even I would say one of the biggest ones that informed me before I even got into this work, before I went to grad school, was Rihanna and Chris Brown. Just watching this will they, won't they, push pull, defending him, being worried about him. And it made sense. It was how she feels. She's not stupid. She's not weak. She's not anything. She was trauma bonded to him from a very young age. And so even keeping that relationship in mind today might help.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're going to focus on what a trauma bond is, how it differs from healthy attachment, and even codependency. Codependency and trauma bond are sort of similar but different, and how this dynamic really keeps people stuck in unsafe situations with intimate partners.
Yep. Yep. Would you say, Janine, a trauma bond could lead into codependence?
I think it could. I think there's some there's definitely some overlap. And I think you're going to talk about the similarities and differences, but
Yeah.
it's kind of one in the same, except that trauma bonds specifically come from power and control, coercion, or sometimes a trauma bond can be two people who've experienced a different kind of trauma, but together. And then they're inexplicably kind of enmeshed. You know, you don't know where one begins and the other ends.
Yeah.
Whereas codependency is a little bit more of a relationship style,
Yeah.
a way of relating to people, not necessarily with a specific person. Trauma bond
Yeah.
is like specific person.
Right. Right. I had someone ask me once, they asked, can a trauma bond happen between two people who've experienced a lot of trauma but separately? And so they end up connecting because they have trauma histories and they feel like they can't be with someone who doesn't have a similar
I don't think that's a trauma
upbringing.
bond. I think that would be more codependency, or if someone has done a lot of their work, maybe actually a very healthy relationship
Sure.
with someone who they just feel like they can relate to. Like you've
Yeah.
actually seen some things.
Yeah.
Or codependency, like we get
We've
each other
been through it.
because
Yeah.
we've been
That's
through it
more
and we're quirky.
that's what more of what I'm asking.
Now, wait, if those two people though get together, let's say they get together out of a shared tendency toward codependency because of past relationships,
Yeah.
and then they have trauma together because of it, then there's trauma
Right.
bonding.
Right.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. A trauma bond is essentially an emotional attachment formed through cycles of abuse and intermittent reinforcement, pain followed by relief. So it's rooted in survival, physiology, not mutual affection. Okay, I'm going to finish this part and then we're going to dive in a little bit deeper.
Mm-hmm.
It's where the same person who hurts you is also the one who makes you feel safe again. I actually heard this quote on a podcast recently. I'm so bad at being able to like go back to which podcast it was, but the quote that I read or heard, I didn't read it, was shoot, now I gotta find it again. It's very similar to what is written here, but it's a trauma bond. In a trauma bond, the person who is hurting you is also the person who is soothing you.
Oh yeah.
And that stuck out so much to me because you know, having been in this field for a long time, I mean, you and I see a lot of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard this individual put it that way, I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly how this goes. I
Oh,
couldn't
yeah.
I couldn't like simplify it or be more precise myself.
And now, even on a hormonal level, the hormones involved in this bonding experience, which we actually talked about a couple years ago at that conference,
Mm-hmm.
you have cortisol, you have adrenaline, those are stress hormones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oxytocin is that kind of comfort connector. And then you've got dopamine, which is comfort and reward, working in that system in the brain, in the reward system. So
Mm-hmm.
when you get into that reward system in the brain and you're reinforcing it over and over and over again, this relationship starts to look like cocaine in the brain. When we fight and then we come back together, we're looking at our phone, waiting for that text message to pop up. All of that is hitting that dopamine part, that
Mm-hmm.
dopamine center in our brain. And it's super reinforcing. And that is essentially the addiction model. We
Yeah.
get an unpredictable reward, which is one of the strongest ways that we get reinforcement. This is like the slot machine model. I pull it 100 times, but one time I won $10, so I'll sit there all day.
Right.
That
Right.
unpredictable positive reward creates a psychological dependence, literally, in
Yeah.
your brain.
Well, and the cool thing, a little teaser, is Grace actually talks about that in her story with us. And yeah, I mean it's literally addictive.
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
That type of brain dump and dopamine dump happens in everyone who is in this type of relationship.
It also explains why you're jonesing when there's a separation or we have a fight and they won't answer us. Your
Mm-hmm.
brain is screaming
Mm-hmm.
then to connect with this person,
Mm-hmm.
just like it would scream for a drug that when you're suddenly in withdrawal. It's no
Yeah.
different.
This goes into what you and I do all the time and teach on all the time, which is basically the cycle of abuse, right?
Hmm.
So we have our conflict, we have reconciliation, and then we go into minimization. Cycle of abuse is honeymoon, tension building, blow up, reconciliation, honeymoon, right? So very, very similar, basically the same. The survivor might rationalize or excuse the behavior, focus on the good moments or justify staying, feel guilty feel guilty or anxious at the idea of leaving. And you and I, having worked with the offender side, we can't always name it in a certain way because we want to make sure that we're being mindful of who we're working with. But I mean, half the time when I talk to some of our guys, I'm sitting there thinking like this is probably what's going on in their partner's head,
Oh, yeah. And they do it
right?
on a macro scale in their
Yeah.
life. So
Yeah.
they really do it to the survivor. We interchange survivor and victim because
Yeah.
victim in a police report helps us hold them accountable.
Yes.
Survivor is empowering to the survivor community as it should be. So
Yes.
when you hear us use it, that's why we go back and forth. But
Yeah.
when I'm sitting there with someone, even some of these guys, and the women too, honestly, to a lesser degree, but we still see this on occasion. We experience a little bit of a roller coaster sometimes with
Yeah.
these folks because
Oh yeah.
that's what they've experienced in their lives, that's what they do in their relationships, and so
Yeah.
they'll try different ways to connect with us or not.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Well, and the perpetrator may use, or the abuser may use apologies, threats, or affection to regain control. We see that all the time. We actually see that, like you were just saying, we see that in group,
Yes.
right? They'll come up, they'll have some level of attitude and have a mini explosion because they know if they have a big explosion, they'll get the cops called on them. But
Yeah, or kicked out or whatever.
exactly. But then, that night we usually get an email apologizing, which is just, I'm sitting there, I'm like, here we are. You are trying to pull us into the cycle, into your cycle. They'll exploit fear and dependency to keep the cycle going. So essentially making themselves seem like the only ones that care or the only ones that are there. right?
Or that you're replaceable. Like my one of my favorite
Oh,
Beyonce songs, To the Left,
oh yes, I love
which
that
is
song.
like, I could have another you in a minute,
Uh-huh.
they treat us that way, right? If you are in a relationship with this person, they will treat you like you are replaceable. Like they will
Yep.
have somebody in your shoes in 5 seconds. You are lucky to be there being mistreated like you are.
Yep. Yep. It's funny. Everything that we're talking about, I'm sitting there, I'm like, they do that to us in group. They'll say,
Hmm.
oh, I can just go somewhere else. Bye. Bye bye. Go
Oh yeah,
somewhere else.
100%.
Your money's not gold to us.
No, and the funny thing too is a lot of times in domestic violence treatment, because none of us are brand new, they go to their probation officer who says, "Oh, you got to go back and make that right."
Mm-hmm.
Which
Mm-hmm.
is teaching them some relationship skills, hopefully,
Yep.
where they have to come back and go, "Yeah, I was a little hasty there." It's like,
A little?
yeah, turns out you can't just go wherever you want to go. You need to go where your probation officer tells you to go.
Yep. Yep. And then emotional and physical withdrawal symptoms. So it mimics addiction when separation occurs. So essentially, when they withdraw, right, like you were saying, it makes the survivor move back in. That's where the guilt comes in for the survivor. They feel a heavy level of potentially shame in this moment, right? And they'll start to question, maybe I'm the crazy one. So,
And it's like physically painful. This is the thing I will
yeah.
say. If you are loving someone who is in a situation like this, let's say you're watching from a distance, or even you're their best friend or something. It's really easy, I think, to get on our high horse a little bit. Like, what are they doing? Why are they doing
Uh-huh.
this? It is physically painful. Physically painful. Think withdraw, think
Hmm.
how somebody having the shakes. It hurts. It
Yeah.
really, really hurts
Yeah.
to not talk to this person, to separate from this person.
A lot of times when we talk to, especially the people who come back for treatment, they'll come back
Mhm.
and say, hey, how do I get out of being like this? How do I become healthy? Which I love when our people do that, right? Like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's easy to kind of focus on some of the negative stuff that we see, but we do see some progress and growth, and especially when they want to come back and continue to work on themselves. But they'll ask, how do I get healthy? So, healthy attachment is built on safety, consistency, and mutual respect. All of those are so key. The mutual respect piece, though, sticks out because, and again, in Grace's story, which you guys will hear, there's some aspects that I sit there and I'm like, he literally treated her like a child. There was
Mhm.
not even like a child because we should also respect children.
Right.
Um, but just treated her like someone he did not, that was much lesser than him. Um,
Mm,
and so when that's happening, right, like that goes back to that trauma bond. It goes back to that cycle. Another healthy attachment is essentially encouraging independence, self-expression, and emotional regulation. So, emotional regulation isn't telling someone to calm down and that they're crazy, right?
mm-mm.
Encouraging emotional regulation is saying, hey, we're okay. Let's take a minute and come back to the table, right?
Absolutely.
Trauma bond is built on fear, power imbalance, and inconsistency. So, the literal opposite of a healthy attachment. It creates a dependence and suppresses autonomy. So, again, the trauma bond is isolation.
Mm,
They don't want you to have external support. They want you to be dependent on them for everything, emotionally, physically, financially, everything. Which is interesting with the financial piece, though, because sometimes they like switch it up and then you end up working. Anyway,
That's a fun little trick they
I
pull.
know.
Also, sometimes the trauma bond, I'm thinking in bidirectional violence, where two
Mm,
people really are pretty nasty to each other.
mm,
You may not even be isolating, but the behavior's isolating because it's like no one wants you to come around because you have a big fight every
right.
time you're together, or
Right.
your families don't like each other anymore, or it
Yep.
starts to get weird.
Yep. Yep. So, healthy attachment will calm your nervous system down. Trauma bonding will dysregulate your nervous system. That's the other interesting part. So, when we're talking to Grace, she talks a lot about this. And I would encourage all of our listeners to go listen to some of her episodes. She talks about listening to that nervous system, to like listen to your gut, essentially. So when you feel that dysregulation, it's telling you something. Don't just say, I'm crazy and ignore it.
When we get into trauma bond versus codependency, which we kind of alluded to a few minutes ago, codependency is kind of that caretaking, people pleasing, seeking validation. It can be driven by low self esteem, not necessarily by abuse. So, codependency can be created by having a family system that involves substance use
Mm-hmm.
or having maybe a narcissistic parent that you're having to emotionally caretake all the time or accommodate in your day to day, right? It might
Mm-hmm.
happen because maybe you were neglected and so you raised your siblings or one of your siblings raised you. And so there's a little bit of a tendency toward codependency
Mm-hmm.
from a survival perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma bond, that involves abuse, fear, and control. So the
Mm-hmm.
bond, specifically the bond, is strengthened through that cycle of harm and reconciliation. And even when Nat and I talk to our guys about sex, it's like if you make up by having sex, you are just wilding out your nervous system and your hormones.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a pretty common dynamic that we see. And I've had people argue with me. I've had survivors argue with me at times that, well, you just don't understand how we are. We're so alive and in the moment. And I'm like, yeah, because you feel like you're going to die. That's
Mm-hmm.
what that is, And even when we get into strangulation, which is not sexy, by the way, which we also talk with Grace about, that moment of drifting out of your body that people find euphoric, it's the same thing that happens to us before we die, that our body
Mm-hmm.
has a built-in way to comfort us to a degree when we're dying.
So
That
I,
is what that is. So that's a
yeah,
weird thing to incorporate in your sex life, A. So please
yeah.
stop. Just stop it. Stop it. If you please stop. Stop, stop, stop. But
Uh-huh.
just know that that is that thing that's reinforcing is if we then flip the switch, we have this massive fight and then we bond in that way. That is a literal trauma bond. That is what that
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
So codependency is needing to be needed,
Mm.
finding value in being needed. Trauma bonding is needing the person who hurts you.
So why people stay? Why do people stay? That's actually Grace's title of her podcast. It's Why I Stayed, I believe, or Why She Stayed. Why She Stayed. Survival brain. So we go into our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. The fawn is new to me. Like that one's never been used until this year.
I think it goes back a little bit, but I'm with you, Nat. Like that was never a part of my training. However,
No.
I was just talking with one of our coworkers about this who tends
Uh-huh.
to fawn. She came in
Interesting.
my office and she goes, "Hey, girl, I'm not going to say her name, but she has a tendency to fawn and she's self-identified." And we talked about it
Oh, wow.
as a literal trauma response.
Can you explain what fawn means?
Yes. So when you think about fight, flight, or freeze, which we've talked about a million times, Nat and I are fighters.
Hmm.
100%. Nat might run. I'm never going to run. I'm going to fight. Every time I
I'm gonna
don't
fight and
run,
then run.
she's going to fight. She's going to hit you and then run 100 miles an
Yeah,
hour.
you don't get a swing.
I'm going to fight you until one of us stops. That's just kind of where we are. But fawning is really kind of an interesting one that came up. There's some support for it in the research because I was like, what the hell is this? I had to go look into it. It's a much newer thing they talk about, but it's a piece, essentially a piece. And women do this a number of ways. I would say fawning really does show up in trauma bonding because it's I need to make him feel okay. I need to appease him sexually. I need to appear small. I need to be meek or just make things work, amenable. That's fawning.
Hmm. That's helpful. Learned helplessness and distorted self-blame. So I want to go into what learned helplessness is. So, learned helplessness is a condition in which a person has a sense of powerlessness arising from a traumatic event or persistent failure to succeed. It is thought to be one of the underlying causes of depression. So, I literally read that from Google. Thank you, Google. It's helpful to know, I think, what learned helplessness is because we say it a lot and then people look at us and they're like, what? I'm like, This is it.
Well, we say that and we say weaponized incompetence as well. Those are the
Yes,
two that we say quite a bit.
yes. And distorted self-blame. So essentially, again, going into that space of shame and then flipping the table on yourself, essentially, gaslighting yourself. Societal myths are love conquers all. You guys,
It
here's
does not.
the thing. It doesn't. You cannot, and I'm sorry if you like fundamentally disagree with this. Just because you quote unquote love somebody, love also is a choice. It's not always a feeling. So like take
Mm-hmm.
that to the bank.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to sit there and say, well, I just love them, and so I'm going to stick through anything, that's codependency and potentially also trauma bonding.
And could be fatal.
Yes, absolutely. I just had a conversation with someone and we were talking about this, and I looked at them and I was like, you, I said, what would get you to leave? And they were like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if anything could get me to leave. And I was like, that's wild. Less than half the stuff you and I hear, Janine, I would be out.
Oh, a quarter, 10%.
Less. Yes. Yes.
10% maybe. I mean, truly.
So it's wild with what people will allow themselves to endure because they quote unquote love their partner.
And they're such wonderful people. That's one of the things that breaks my heart.
Yeah.
Is the fact that people really want to love because they're good people, because it matters to them, because they're kind. But no, love does not conquer all, and love never conquers abuse. It just doesn't.
No. And I would even question that that's not love, in my opinion. That's
Mm-mm.
that's codependency and trauma bonding. I was gonna say love bombing. Also that. So love conquers all, not a thing. Everyone deserves a second chance. That's
No, they
also
don't.
true. Not
No, they
everyone
don't.
deserves a second chance. And then forgiveness. Something we talked about with Grace was this concept of forgiveness, right? Especially if you're in the faith community, and she openly talks about hers. It's, well, Jesus saved us and forgave us for all our sins, so we have to forgive others. We're not Jesus.
Well, we're not also. Jesus
I'm not
got
God.
big mad and had amazing boundaries.
Yeah.
So, I
Yes.
mean, he's kind of like, you're not listening. I'm going to get to move. And I mean, there were all kinds of things that are
Yes.
fantastic.
Yes. Also, we're not Jesus.
You
Anyway.
can also forgive from afar. So many things to say that we don't need to
Yes.
forgive someone up close for hurting us. We really don't have to
Yes.
do that.
And that goes into my closure episode, you guys. We don't need closure with that person. We can actually find it within ourselves. So if you're trying to lean into forgiveness or you keep going back because you're like, I just don't have closure, message us.
Message us, will help you.
And then reenacting early attachment wounds in adult relationships, which is trauma repetition. Right? So these are the things as to why people stay. These aren't reasons for you to stay and continue to be abused.
Yes. When we're getting into healing and breaking the bond, we got to break the trauma bond. This is my favorite. I get real worked up about this.
Mm-hmm.
I think number one, you got to get you a therapist and get a therapist with some mama bear energy who can also hear what you're really feeling, gives you space to communicate what you're thinking. They don't try to just take over. But the number one thing is you have to realize it's not love. It's the chemistry of trauma in your brain. That's really what it is, but it's not love.
Correct.
So stabilization is one of the things that brings healing. We have to have room to heal. And one of the things we need is to not talk to that person. We need space. Grace shares in her story a need for protection order and then using that protection order, actually enforcing it to get the space that she needed.
Yeah.
And that is just the actual function of a protection order. A protection order will not keep you alive necessarily. You have to keep your head on a swivel with a protection order, but it just might give you something enforceable enough that you can get a little bit of space to process and do this in a healthy way. And geographical space. Sometimes you got to just go. I worked with a woman one time and I just told her, I was like, you have to go. And she left, like middle of the night left.
Yeah.
and just had to go and be just fully away and disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
You need support, trauma informed therapy, peer support, education on abuse cycles. A lot of safe houses and domestic violence shelters have groups and just tons of information. Victim advocates at police departments have a ton of information. You have to learn what healthy connection is. Sometimes that's your therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you didn't have it growing up. You haven't had it in your relationships. Maybe even your friendships are a little wonky. You may need to just get a healthy therapist and learn what that's supposed to feel like.
Yep.
Seeking Safety is an amazing group for women. Nat and I both facilitated it before,
Yeah, we did.
but it really works with codependency and trauma bonding. But it's trauma informed recovery. That's
Mm-hmm.
essentially what it is, which works on safety, self care, and boundary building.
Yep. So, you guys, we're going to wrap up with a few things. If love feels like survival, it's not love. It's
Mm,
trauma bonding.
yes, it is. Say it again for the people in the back.
If love feels like survival, it's not love. It's trauma bonding.
Yes.
If you feel like you are having to survive, if you are waking up and your nervous system is on fire and you are going to sleep and your nervous system is on fire, my friend, that's trauma bonding.
Mm-hmm.
Recovery is possible. I think that's one of the reasons I loved sitting with Grace was because not only is she a survivor, but like I said before, she took ownership of her story and unapologetically, and like you said, no shame, is talking about her experience. I think that is a form of recovery. It takes time, support, and safe connections. Okay. When you're in a trauma bond, like we said earlier, you'll feel isolated. When you get out of that, it's really important to find the people, even if they didn't do it right, find the people who you know really loved you and love you, and find safe people. There are support groups for this. Again, therapy, therapists. And if you don't know where to find connection, honestly, go listen to Grace's podcast because she talks about what this looks like. You can also message us. We are always willing to try our best to help connect you with whatever you need in whatever state you're in. We cannot be your therapist, but we can do our best to try to help connect you with someone if we know people in the area. And here's the thing, you guys, get help or resources. Let me rephrase that. If you are a friend or a family member of someone who's going through this, encourage them to get resources. Don't feel like you are the only resource they have.
Don't be their only resource because you don't know
Don't,
what you're talking about.
correct.
You might know a little bit, but
You
like
might know, well, you might know something's wrong.
you might know something's wrong, but you may not be able to help
Correct.
that person put the pieces together. So get them to the people who can.
Correct. Yeah. So help encourage them to get to find that. One, it actually gives them empowerment and gives them autonomy to do that instead of you swooping in and saying, I'm going to save the day, because that's actually what they're used to. And then their day isn't saved, it's wrecked and they're abused. So don't do that, even though you're not going to, hopefully you don't also swoop in and demonstrate similar patterns, but help give them autonomy and help give them options and resources. One of the things that Janine and I like to do with some of our episodes, we don't do this probably nearly enough, so we should probably start, is give you guys the National Domestic Violence Hotline. So it's 800-799-SAFE, 800-799-7233. Okay. You can also go to thehotline.org. The beautiful thing, and I actually tested this, the beautiful thing with the hotline.org is there's an X in the corner and it'll exit out of your screen, but also delete the history that you even looked at it. So your partner cannot see that you were looking at resources. And you can also press escape twice and it will also exit quickly. And I do believe that will also delete your history. So there's some resources right there for you guys. I hope this was helpful. Again, Janine and I are so excited for our Friday's episode. And I was telling her, I was like, I think it would be good to do a trauma bonding episode mini because this is gearing up right for Grace's testimony in her interview. So,
Yeah. Thanks, Nat. This is a good one. This is a really important one.
yeah, this is a little bit more content heavy, less fun and jokey. Because to be honest, there's not a lot of fun and jokes about trauma bonds. But we appreciate you guys, and let's redo that. That's
Your face.
um
I finally lowered my hand, by the way. My hand was up
you
the whole
figured it
time, and I
out.
finally
Oh my
figured it
God.
out.
We love you all, as always.
Bye, forensic friends.
I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening and join us next week for more crime, psychology, and heart.